Uh, Once again, welcome everyone, and welcome online. So we've been going through teachings on the Noble Eightfold Path, the path of no more suffering within the Four Noble Truths. It's the fourth. The first three really identify the source of suffering, and we get to the third, it says, well, this can cease suffering. No cause, no result. And then the fourth is the Noble Eightfold Path, in which we eliminate that suffering. And we're at the eighth part here. So I see some new faces. But I think it's good to build this into context, because the eighth piece here, right concentration, is, in order for it to be cultivated appropriately, the other pieces need to be integrated. So it's a context when we think about the idea of right concentration. It's the word they often use, samadhi, this unification of mind that's just present in all these mental distortions, and the clarity of mind, the presence of mind, an awareness that I can abide in and rest with clarity and vividness. It takes a while to acquire such a mind. And these other components are prerequisites, and not just that it has to be done first, but it has to be done all the way, the ethics, the conditioning. So we started with right view, then right intention, then right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And so when we're talking about this mind being unified, being clear, being present in a way that can see clearly, we need to have it conditioned in a way that ripens so I can understand the nature of my suffering. Within Buddhism, the real source of suffering, the real source of samsara, is my confusion. I don't identify the world and myself in a way that's accurate, and as a result, I create a lot of problems. I really think that if I can get you to do this or that, I could be happy. And if John is the same John that was here yesterday, will be here tomorrow, and so out of my confusion, out of a misperception of my experience, I just create habits and conditioning and karma to try to make things the way I'd like, and have that as much as possible. Try to avoid things that I don't like, and I create habits and desires and tendencies, and I'm literally building a prison. I'm building a prison of a construct of samsara, and it's really subtle. I mean, but it's so prevalent. It's so prevalent. In order to really free ourselves, it's as simple as knowing who we are. Seeing clearly. The liberation of samsara is based in wisdom. And so one of the beautiful things about Buddhism, I find, is that it has one interest: what's true. That's all it cares about, what's true. And so that's why we question things. That's why we examine things. That's why we poke at things. And we unravel things. We unravel, the concepts that I have in mind, and see if they're true or not. And the hypothesis is very simple. If I were to see clearly, I'll be liberated. It's my confusion that keeps me here. And the only way to see clearly is to have a presence of mind that is tuned and can abide and rest in clear samadhi. So that's right concentration. In order to have such a mind, it need not be confused with just a mind of concentration. You can have samadhi, you can have concentration, and it could not be the condition of awakening. And there's a difference between a mind that's present, imbued with compassion, bodhicitta, and understanding of the interdependence of things, and a mind that's just focused. I often use the analogy of a sharpshooter. A sharpshooter can be very concentrated, but probably not going to get liberated. Versus someone who has a mind that is imbued with a deep and rich understanding of the interdependence of each other, and a great care and compassion understanding that my own existence is dependent upon you and others. And that type of samadhi that's imbued with these pieces. That's why it's so important to cultivate the ethics and the clarity and the right view and the right intention as I develop that attention. And it's interesting. My wife forwarded me an email today, and I don't know what she thought she knew what I'd be teaching on, but it was a study that had shown that short, brief training on mindfulness meditation actually inhibits ethical behavior. Not that it doesn't increase it, it actually decreases it. That if someone, and they took a bunch of like college age students and different categories and 5 different categories of things, and they gave them some training in sort of mindfulness, sort of presence of like the body, sensations of the body or the mind, and they taught them this sort of non-judgmental awareness. And they had them doing that for a little while, and then they subject them to tests where they actually did some harm to some people by accident. And how did they feel about it? And they actually found that the people with the non-judgmental awareness didn't feel that bad about it, as opposed to people that did. It was actually counter to growing that sense of really some responsibility and some compassion for what happened. And so this is something my teachers are aware of, and they pound it into us. But I don't think it's common knowledge in general. This idea that if I meditate more, I'll automatically be more compassionate, or I'll automatically be more kind, or I'll automatically. But if you're sitting in meditation without the other conditions, the training, and I'm sitting here and I'm learning to be non-judgmental, and then something happens, well, I'm not so judgmental about it. And so what they've actually found in these tests is that they're less compassionate without the additional pieces. So that's where it's so good to have clear teachings and teachers, and within the Noble Eightfold Path, when they really emphasize having a good teacher, having someone that can take you through this process of unifying the mind. So if we want to achieve a level of mind that is productive and clear and unified and healthy, well, we need to water it and nurture it, just like our bodies, right? If I want to be healthy, I gotta eat healthy food. And if I want a healthy mind, I need to watch what thoughts I put in it. And if I want to cultivate a level of being for liberation, I really need to be treating my mind and body in a way that is conducive for that. And so some of the things that people don't often get taught is what I do off the cushion is just as important as what I'm doing on the cushion. So if I'm sitting for, we just did a 20-minute meditation. And, if I sit for 20 minutes or a half hour, an hour, whatever someone sits for, 15 minutes, that's nice. And then I go out for 16 hours and my mind's a scattered mess, reactive, grasping and change. So I've got 16 hours of acting like this, and then I sit for 20 minutes. Then I go out, and in 16 hours I'm acting out. It's hard to really make this matter much. But if in my 16 hours I'm watching my mind, I'm watching my motivations, I'm working on my ethics, and with the ethical behavior, that's creating conditions, karmic imprints, in a way that then when I meditate, wow, it's a lot easier to meditate and be clear if I feel good about what I'm doing. If I have some anger, resentment, or I'm selfish, self-centered, or these types of activities going on, then it's going to be more difficult to really clear that, rest in that awareness. So when we get to this point, we have to see if the other ones are all critically important, the right view. The right view, understanding that my experience right now is a very subjective, interdependent experience. It looks very solid. You're over there, I'm over here, and some people I like, some people I don't like. That peach pie was pretty good I had earlier, and it was delicious. And and so the world I live in starts to look pretty clear. But if I look a little more deeply, where's the delicious in the peach pie, right? Does everybody like peach pie? No. You like it though. Yeah, I liked it. Some people don't like it. It's odd. And some people don't like Brussels sprouts. I really find that odd. So the delicious, right, if we understand that, and I know those of you that have been doing this with us for a while start to understand that the delicious is not in the pie. It's not in the ice cream. Some people like it, some people don't. But the karmic conditioning of creating the seeds, and that when that pie touches me, I have a delicious experience. And somebody doesn't, and there's a different karma that's being created there. Some people are allergic to certain fruits, in which case it's not good at all. And if we start thinking about if my attitude about the person I'm talking to sees some value in them, that's going to change my experience with that person versus sticking a label on them because they got a hat on with a motto I don't like so much. Fill in the picture. And so most of our observation of the world is we're actually filling in the picture. There's the detail of that we fine tune. I like this person, I don't like this person, they're a jerk, they're funny, they're this, they're that. When in action, that's a human being who's showing up in a particular way at this moment, and maybe I like them in this moment. But 2 hours earlier, how they show up, I didn't like them. And actually, 2 hours earlier, I didn't like me, how I showed up. And now I showed up how I like myself. And then we start to understand that, wow, wait a minute, if I look a little more clearly, this person that I'm seeing today is not showing up exactly as they showed up yesterday. And now, maybe they didn't have some sleep or something went wrong or they're just frustrated. And how they're showing up today is different. And so am I. And I start to understand that, how I am appearing today is a stream of consciousness. And the stream is always moving. These are new moments. I'm not that moment anymore. And if I was angry and frustrated 2 hours ago, I might not be now. If I was a jerk 2 hours ago, I might not be a jerk now. If I was really kind and loving 2 hours ago, I may not be so loving and kind now. But I might say, well, I was really a jerk, and I might beat myself up all day over how I showed up in a moment. Worse yet, I might beat up someone else in my mind when I see how they showed up yesterday and did something I didn't like, and then hold that in my mind and think that's who they are. And this is the delusional sort of grasping of this person did that one thing, they're like that, I did this, I'm this kind of person, they're that kind of person. And we don't really look more deeply and realize that I keep showing up in a new moment with new opportunities and potentials, but how I'm experiencing this moment has a lot to do with the habits I've been creating my whole life. I've been creating attitudes and habits and thoughts my whole life and building labels and judgments and views that fill in the details of people and experiences, things I like, things that are cool, things that are interesting, things that are not. And then I think those things actually are cool and interesting or not, or this or that. And I don't realize I've actually been reinforcing those thoughts. So if we want to investigate that, we need a mind that can observe that and observe even our language. How are we talking? Am I a jerk because I did something jerky? Am I an impatient person? Anybody here ever been an impatient person? Have you ever been patient? Yeah, so which are you? Are you patient or are you impatient? Or are you a human being that is sometimes impatient and sometimes patient? Sometimes understanding and kind, sometimes really judgmental and harsh. But I'm showing up that way in that moment. And I'm showing up in that way in a moment based on habits and conditionings and attitudes I've been reinforcing. And often I don't realize that I have a lot to do with that. And I keep looking out there because if I could get that jerk away from me and this cool person with me and this job, then, I'm going to have it made and I'll be happy. Not that that ever works, but it doesn't stop us from trying. And so with Buddhism, it's really seeing clearly that let's look more deeply at this experience we're having together with the cup, with the water, with my attitude, with my experience. And fundamentally, see if we can shift and start identifying more accurately with who we are and the experience we're having. Easier said than done. But a good starting point is to identify more than our awareness than what we're aware of. So, as we'll identify with I am angry, I am happy, I'm having a good day, having a terrible day, frustrated, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, I'm happy, joyful. And so those are experiences we're having. But what if I was more identified with the awareness of that experience? And I'm experiencing some joy right now. It's cool. I'm experiencing some frustration right now. I'm not happy. I'm experiencing that. And so this great observation, this mindful way of being aware of the thoughts that I'm having and the things I'm doing, and identify more with the awareness of those things and those thoughts and those attitudes rather than the thoughts and the attitudes. And then we start having an opportunity to notice some things. Like my anger will come and go. Like my joy will come and go. Like my anxiety will come and go. That I don't actually need to reinforce or reify those thoughts or attitudes. They will actually come and go on their own. And some of them are healthier than others. It might be a good idea to address some of the unhealthy ones and look at them. Is that true? And so within Buddhism, there's a pretty straightforward hypothesis. And I like Robina Corton. She's a nun that talks like a sailor, but she's dead on, man. She's right into it. But she likes to say, well, let's take a working hypothesis. And, it's fundamental. You don't have to assume anything's true. A working hypothesis. And the working hypothesis is that all of my mental afflictions, all of my mental and emotional suffering is based on something that's not true. And that's what we're getting at in the Eightfold Path, is the cessation of suffering is wisdom. So if it's not true, my anger is not going to arise if there's nothing to create it. And the Buddhist principle is that any mental affliction is based on misperception. It's not fundamentally true. And so that's either true or it's not. You have to check. And have I ever been angry or frustrated based on something that's true or not? And so we have to look. Am I really angry because of what I perceive as giving the rise to the anger is true or not. So you can take anything that I got angry at, and was my anger based in reality, or was my anger based on something that fundamentally is not the way things are? So, for example, was I angry because I think somebody shouldn't have done something? Okay, so why should I think they shouldn't have done something? I bet there's a reason they did something, right? People don't do things for no reason. They do things because of reasons. And so they did something probably because they're trying to find happiness or avoid suffering, just like me. And their actions were based on their whole life experience of how they were raised and whether they were loved or not loved, whether they're beaten or hugged or taught some certain ways, or were insecure at a moment or not, or suffering from some mental affliction or alcohol or love and kindness. But however they acted didn't come from nowhere. However they acted came from them trying to find some happiness and avoid suffering, just like all of us. And so why would I think that they shouldn't be the way they are? Now, if I change that to I don't like how they are, well, that's a little more accurate, right? That's a little more accurate. I don't like how they are. And then there's an opportunity for compassion, which if they're showing up in a way that's unhealthy or creating suffering, I'm going to address that behavior. But coming from a place of wisdom and understanding that they're acting in the only way they can at the moment, as opposed to I think they should be able to act different than they are. Or that I can be better than I am in a given moment. How many times have we beat ourselves over that one? Really beating ourselves up for what I did and I should have known better. I would suggest that how you showed up in that moment was the best you could in that moment, based on whether you had sleep or not, based on the frustration, the feelings that arose, the things that arose. Has anybody ever woke up and just said, I'm really going to screw up my life right now? Generally, no. Generally, it's, I'm going to try to be okay in some way. And sometimes I don't feel okay and I don't know how to be okay. And likewise with others. So if I start to be a little more clear about my anger, so much of my anger will be based on wanting things to be different than they are. As if I'm the creator of the universe and I know how things should be. Which is fascinating, because don't we think we know sometimes, really? I know how people ought to drive. I really know how they should organize a supermarket. Don't we sometimes? I've never been trained in that or anything, but I know. And how people should act and how countries should be. And I'm one of 7.5 billion human beings who all have an idea about how things should be. Wow. When we step back from it, we can start to see our thinking maybe is not as clear as we might like. Which doesn't mean to say that things are unhealthy or harmful and we can do something about it. And yeah, absolutely. Let's see what we can do about it. But thinking it shouldn't have happened is not going to help me solve it not happening in the future. Seeing how the causes that gave rise to something, well, now I can work on. Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. So there's these three marks of existence, and we would say that if you have a mental affliction and anger, frustration, whatever that is, it's usually based in the misperceiving these three things of the way things are. And one thing is things are impermanent. Everything, you, your friends, the world, Mount Sopris, the rivers, you never step in the same river twice. You're not the same person you were yesterday, and neither is anybody else. And my feelings and thoughts are impermanent. They'll come and they'll go. And how many times in our life do we try to make things permanent that aren't permanent? You know, it shouldn't change. Carbondale shouldn't change. My relationship shouldn't change. I married this person. You should freeze in time and don't ever change. My friends shouldn't change. My job shouldn't change. You know, how much of our mind is going to say how things shouldn't be changed and how I want things to go back to the way they were? Well, that creates a lot of suffering, doesn't it? How about your plan for the day? It shouldn't change. I had a plan, man, and my flight should be on time, and my car should start. So now if we start looking at our thinking and our attitudes, we can see how much mental and emotional suffering we're creating just out of misperceiving the nature of things. Things are impermanent. Things are impermanent. And there's no one thing out there, person, place, thing, that's going to provide you lasting happiness. It doesn't. There's anything that provides you even joyful or happiness is also something that can provide suffering. Your favorite thing can provide suffering. Too many peach pies could provide suffering. First piece, pretty good, right? Third one, not so much. The suffering around things that we desire. I really like this, and then I create a desire. And it's interesting because the moment I create desire, what am I? I'm unfulfilled right now. You know, somebody tells me something cool about some place or something to do, and it's like, wow, I want that, and now I'm lacking. And then I think that thing can give me this happiness, and then I get that thing, and then does that keep me happy for the rest of my life? Probably not. It might not even last 10 minutes. Maybe it'll last an hour, I don't know. And then if I lose that thing, now I'm suffering again. Or even that thing just doesn't give you the same joy. I don't know if your flip phone gives you the same joy as whatever version this thing is. Yeah. Man, imagine if you had to answer the phone like we used to. Like, remember the day when we had to pick up a phone and you had to be brave and not know who it was? Suck it up and say hello. The good old days. Hello, and find out who's there as opposed to, oh, maybe I'll not talk to them. Or I get a call from someone called Scam Likely. Have you ever heard that person? Yeah, Scam Likely. He calls a lot. It's an unusual name. I tend to not answer. But we really, even though we can step back right now and go, yeah, that's kind of crazy thinking. And how much do I wind myself up thinking I'll be happy when and if this happens? And not realize that the cause of well-being is coming from how I live my life, not the external experience. As a matter of fact, if I start living my life ethically, creating the seeds based in wisdom, I'm going to have a lot more happiness, regardless of the situation. What if I remember that every situation I come in contact with in my life is an opportunity to grow and develop more wisdom and a path to awakening? Well, that would be different, probably more accurate. So this is the path, is to start to unravel the misperception of myself and the world I'm living in. So I stop doing things that reinforce the prison I create and start engaging in a world that unravels that prison and engage in activities that lead to more clarity and a deeper wisdom of the nature of this experience that we're having. And in order to do that, we need a mind that is present, that's our friend, that's unified, that's clear. And that's why, meditation is so indispensable. Within this teaching, they talk about two forms of meditation. There's two main categories that they talk about within Buddhist traditions, and one is concentration. That's this deep state of samadhi, of concentration. And we were doing that when we were focused on the breath. We were focused on the breath, and then our mind might wander, and then we came back to the breath, and our mind might wander, and we came back to the breath. And if we were to really train in this and create the conditions, the environment to really be successful, we would actually develop the ability to rest my attention where I choose to, without wavering, with clarity and vividness, for days at a time, effortlessly. And that's the level of mind they're talking about with right concentration. It's right there. And that level of mind takes not just the meditation, but it takes the ethics, and it takes the view. Because if I don't have the view, if I keep thinking you're the cause of my happiness or my suffering, it's just not, I'm not going to get very far. If I understand that together are kind of creating, you might be acting a bit like an idiot, or I might be acting a bit like an idiot, or maybe at an expectation around what we think that you should have never changed, and or that you ought to be nicer than you are, or that I ought to be nicer than I am, or that apple pie should have been baked a little longer. I went to apple pie from peach pie. Did you notice how I slipped that in? Okay, I'm done with the apple pie. I was thinking about that for a moment. And if I do that, well, then I'm going to create the conditions for this mind that can rest more clearly in my meditation. So the whole path, right view, right motivation, what are my intentions? Am I coming from a place of harmlessness or harm? Am I coming from a place of goodwill or ill will? Am I coming from a place of understanding of interdependence, or of grasping and reifying, or creating desire? What's my motivation? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I thinking what I'm thinking in that sense? Well, if I can develop a meditation practice that helps me be more attentive, well, now I can apply that attentiveness to my interactions and have that grandfather of mindfulness back here watching this little knucklehead of a teenager run around like a maniac, chasing down. I'm already on to banana splits, actually. Had a good one back in Pennsylvania last week. I worked all week for that banana split, by the way. It was pretty good. But I digress. But the mind can do that, and then the grandfather of mindfulness is observing that and going, maybe that's not so healthy. Maybe that's not so realistic, and bringing you back. And so if we develop, and that's why it's so important to have a regular meditation practice that is focused just on concentration, because initially in our stages of this path, one of the biggest obstacles of our ability to see clearly is I have a mind that's scattered. I have a very obsessive compulsive mind. And you may have noticed, I don't know about you, when you're on the breath, did your mind ever wander? It may have. And when we listen to someone talk, often we're not even hearing them anymore because our mind's thinking about what we're going to say. And then often I'm doing things and I don't even remember my ride to work because my mind was somewhere else. Like this mind is dragging us around. And unless I develop the ability to be present with what I'm doing, it's not going to be very helpful during my day. So a regular meditation practice where I start developing the antidote to the obsessive compulsive mind, which is concentration, is a critical practice where you focus. It doesn't have to be a breath, any one thing that you focus on. You know, some people use different things to focus on, but you focus on one thing and rest it there, and you start developing the ability to do that. It could be a rock. A lot of the old yogis, they give you a rock and focus on that. And then the other type of meditation is insight meditation, vipassana meditation. This, with this mind now that I have that is imbued with the ethics and the view and some ability to concentrate, well, now I can bring a meditation into the nature of my experience and question it. And that's the liberation. I mean, ultimately, the Buddha's big breakthrough, the big breakthrough is, you know, he came into India and people have been doing high levels of samadhi way before he was ever brought into the scene. I mean, there were great sadhus, there were great, you know, these yogis and meditators. I mean, they could go to the subtlest level of mind. And he trained with them and he went through all those levels. He hit all the jhanas, he did that. And then what he noticed was when he came out of meditation, nothing irreversible had changed, you know. While he's in that experience, but it did not alleviate his mental constructs, his confusion. But when you were there, he didn't have any of those. When you're in those states of meditation, you are resting in non-dual awareness. You know, there is no me and you, and you know, it's a much more pure awareness where those distinctions fade away. You stop meditating and then they come back. And so what he thought was, you know, that wasn't liberation, that was a vacation. And he thought there's got to be a way out. There's got to be something that's going to really liberate yourself from this. And so he trained with one, he went all the way through that, and then he went and he trained with another, he went all the way through that. And then some of you know that, you know, he went through just years of, you know, overcoming the body with a very ascetic lifestyle and the practices that they did. And, you know, that wasn't working. And but fundamentally, he came to a point where he realized he had this thought, and he remembered a time in his life where he slipped into this state. You know, it's called shamatha practice now. This state of calm abiding, which is interesting because with calm abiding, at shamatha, it's really at this first jhana state, and it is not the most subtle mind. It's actually down a few notches. So he'd been up here, and when you're up here and you're really subtle, you really don't have access to a conceptual mind. You're beyond that. You're beyond this conceptual mind. And so you go there, it's blissful, it's luminous, it's non-conceptual, but you don't have access to a conceptual mind. But there's this state, and that's this sort of ninth stage of shamatha, where you calmly abide in this first jhana realm, where you can rest your awareness in this non-dual state. But it's not that subtle, where if you want to have a thought, you can. If you want to pick up a thought, you can. And so having got his mind service, well, he went in to abide in that state. And in that state, then he picked up a thought like, am I my body? You know, then the vipassana, am I my mind? Am I, you know, that's where they go through the 5 skandhas. And started using that pure vividness and ability to, with that level of mind, pierce the nature of, you know, am I my thoughts? Am I my body? Am I, you know, really pinpointing vipassana insight and seeing that he's none of those things. And then his awareness breaks through. And because that awareness, that realization comes, and you have that level of mind, you could saturate your mind and rest there and literally break through all conceptual concept of that's inhibiting you from seeing the nature of who you are. That was his big breakthrough, is that he combined the shamatha with the vipassana and found liberation, and saw he woke up. He woke up. That's what it means to be a Buddha, to be awake. So when we're talking about right concentration, it includes both of those pieces. The ability to have the mind like that, and then to be able to use the mind in a way that incorporates the wisdom of the nature of reality. So that shouldn't take more than a weekend or something, I think. One of those good retreats. Maybe one of those 10-day ones, I don't know. But you can see that it's a process. And none of the steps are independent. Right view is necessary to start acting in a healthy way. Right intention is to know whether I'm making choices that lead to awakening or not. Is it coming from grasping or from recognition of our interdependence? Is it coming from compassion or harm? And then the right speech, right? Am I saying words that are kind, healthy, accurate, or not? Right actions. Are my actions ethical, in accordance with creating the karmic imprints that are conducive to creating that mind? My livelihood. We spend most of our time at work. Most of our awake days at work. Is my livelihood, conducive? Does it create good in the world? Is there a way to use my job or my attitudes at my job, even if it's an auto mechanic, in a way that's conducive? Like, as an auto mechanic, I can be helping people safely be on the roads. I can help people have transportation to work. I can do that. It can be a very good practice. Making assault weapons, probably not a very good livelihood, right? Not going to help a lot of people, maybe. And so I spend a lot of my time at work, and what I do has an effect. So cause and effect, right view is understanding cause and effect. Are my actions creating more good and harmony and virtue in the world or not? And the more I do that, that creates conditions that my mind is going to meditate better. What they say is that you could be a great meditator, you can focus, but if I haven't conditioned the ethics and the value, it's not going to address my mental afflictions. It's kind of like pouring water on a rock. The Dharma is not going to be very useful. But if I fertilize, with kindness, compassion, ethics, right view, then I sit and my realizations have somewhere to grow. And so it's really necessary to have those pieces. And then the effort and the mindfulness of knowing what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, whether it's healthy or not. And with this concentration, so it's this very integrated way of being. And if I concentrate, with a practice that's imbued with ethical behavior, well, I'm going to be more likely to create that opportunity more often. And I won't be very perfect. And tomorrow I might yell at somebody, and I start again today. But if I understand that I'm not that person that yelled today, here's a day that will never come again. What am I watering now? I'm creating my future right now. This future, if I want my life to be better, I'd be a better person today. It's so fundamentally simple and so incredibly difficult to comprehend, because we tend to, immediate, I'm hungry, I eat. Eat too much, don't feel good. Eat too little, still hungry. Whereas if I start planting the seeds of wisdom and ethical behavior, the conditions are ripening in my future for more well-being and more satisfaction and less agitation. And those conditions that created agitation, anger, frustration, or a lack, they don't arise because I've been working on that. I've been eliminating the cause of anger, rather than just trying to deal with my anger. And that's the thing, it's really hard to wrap our head around. The best time to work on your anger is when you're not angry. When I'm not angry, I can be working on patience and clarity and wisdom. When I'm angry, it's pretty hard to do that. And so, so this is that path. And as simple as this is, I think the thing that I really want to emphasize is that in order for us to get any flow to this, it requires more than a meeting once a week. It requires more than dabbling. It requires a sustained effort over time. And that sustained effort will sometimes look like I'm not meditating, but the sustained effort is I know it's important. The sustained effort is that I don't beat myself up when I don't practice, but I know the practice is valuable. The sustained effort is continually reminding myself of the nature of reality, of right view, of interdependence, of how I'm creating the mental and emotional suffering of my own mind. And you know what? You don't need to be a rocket scientist or a Buddhist with the understanding of emptiness to see that when I'm angry and frustrated at someone, I'm probably have a lot to do with that. It's not always them. And if that person was my uncle, that same action wouldn't be a thing. If I had enough sleep last night, might be different. If I knew that person had just lost their loved one yesterday, might be different. In other words, my attitude, what the attitude I'm bringing to it, might be different. And my experience is different. And so that's where we can start poking at in very clear ways. If my attitude was different, what if I actually knew deep down in my heart that this day will never come again in my life? I don't know how many I have. I ask myself, is this really worth getting upset about? Is this how I want to die? Angry, frustrated? And what about I'm resentful at someone? I was at a thing last night, and this guy just was talking about how he didn't want to forget when somebody does them wrong. I thought, wow, that's a trip, because the person you have a resentment at doesn't exist. Why would you carry anger and frustration that you suffer over someone that doesn't exist? The person who did that thing to me 10 years ago, that person doesn't exist. If he's alive today, or she, they're a whole different person, and they've done a lot of things over 10 years. And it might be a very different thing. They're a person who did that one thing one time at one moment in their life, and that person doesn't exist anywhere but my mind. That construct of that person frozen in time of 10 years ago that didn't change, that doesn't have a good quality, that I have resentment at, only exists in my mind.
He's probably worse.
Way worse, right? Especially if I think about it more. And the only place it exists is my mind. It's a construct of my mind. But I'm not going to forgive them, because I might actually be comfortable. When we forgive someone, we give ourselves permission to stop suffering. It's kind of weird. We think if we forgive someone, what do you think? Their life gets magically better. I'm going to sprinkle a little potion on you of forgiveness. Okay, you can go be happy now. I finally forgive you. But these are constructs of our mind. And rather than when I forgive someone, what I'm really doing is giving myself permission to stop suffering. I don't need to carry that. You hurt me once 10 years ago. You don't need to keep hurting me for the rest of my life. That's me carrying that around. Yeah, you hurt me then. And, I think I deserve to not suffer anymore. So I forgive you. I know that at that moment, that's what you had to offer. Didn't make it okay, but I'm going to be okay now. So these are the things when we talk about this Eightfold Path, is that there's cause and effect. And if we look at the cause of anger, or the cause of resentment, or the cause of these things, if we trace it down, do we find that the cause is based in reality, or is the cause based in a mental construct of something that fundamentally is not true? It's a mental construct. And so this is where right mindfulness and right effort really are helpful. start noticing those things. And then maybe we'll stop saying things like, I had the worst day ever, or the best day ever. Maybe just, you had a good time today. Experience that, it was good. Or some frustration today. I was listening to Jetsuma Tenzin Palma. It's just, just so, and, it's a common sort of a thing that we strive for. It's called the Teflon mind. The Teflon mind, it doesn't get hooked. It doesn't get hooked by that grasping, by that misperception. And the analogy, it's pretty funny. She one of her first lessons on the Teflon mind was she's in Thailand, and some Thai royalty, someone who's pretty up there, a woman, was invited to the estate, and put her up at this estate, and it's this huge mansion with a private beach, and just all this luxury, and she just became a nun, right? Vow of poverty, being a nun, simple life, and she said, I'm uncomfortable being here. I don't think this is right. And the woman said, why? She said, you didn't ask for it. You're not desiring it. It was offered to you. It won't last. You'll be gone. What's wrong with it? And she realized her attachment was to being a nun in the simple thing, and she couldn't enjoy that. But likewise, she's going to be where she spent 12 years in a cave, enduring a lot of hardship. Well, that was okay. In other words, when things are good or wonderful or kind or joyful, enjoy them. They're not going to last, and they're not going to be the source of your happiness. When things are difficult or challenging, well, that's okay too. So this Teflon mind just experiences it, but doesn't grab on, doesn't get, hey, this shouldn't happen and this should happen. It says, this is what's happening. How do I work with it? And that's where we really want to start working on. And I think with little bits each day and I think a great practice to start with is a real simple one, and one of the most productive things I think any human being could do in their life is practice patience. When we notice a little agitation, when we notice a little distraction, when we notice, practice patience. And you might notice that agitation will come and go. You might notice that really my grasping on how I want to do this and I have to do that, that you're still going to be okay. Like, next, whatever you were frustrated about last Tuesday, you may not remember today. Which is probably true, right? So what if we started with, and I'll leave you with today, and those of you online, a gift of developing a practice of patience during the day. And we'll give that as an assignment this week. Come back next Wednesday and see how we did developing a mind that is focused on just practicing patience during the day. Have a meditation practice, but see how patience comes in. It's actually within our teachings, it is the antidote to anger. That's a great antidote. So it might be helpful, unless you like to be angry, in which case it wouldn't be that helpful. So I'm going to wrap there and just see online or hear if anyone had a final question. So at the end, we take this time and energy of wisdom and merit, and we dedicate it for all sentient beings. So I invite you to share in that dedication. Let us dedicate the merit and the wisdom that we have accumulated here today, collectively and individually, and throughout our lifetimes. We take this merit and wisdom and we dedicate it for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering, find their freedom, and may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to purify our own minds, to help us develop the concentration, the right view, the right intention, the right ethics and behavior, the mindfulness and the effort to recognize our true nature, our Buddha nature. so we can wake up, so we can truly be a benefit to all sentient beings. We can be free of suffering and help others. And may we also dedicate our merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes for the long life of all the spiritual teachers of all spiritual traditions that are authentically teaching a path of no more suffering within their own tradition. May they live long and may they help remove the suffering of all sentient beings. All right, well, thank you all for joining us here in person. Those of you online, always a joy. And thanks so much. Be well, be patient this week.